The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal gardens of Thessia Prime as Commander Sarah Chen walked through the peaceful pathways. Children from 12 different worlds played together in the soft grass, their laughter mixing like a beautiful song. A small Corvan child no bigger than her thumb rode on the back of a young human boy. Nearby, Marathari younglings splashed in the shallow pools while Vexani children created light patterns that danced in the air. Sarah smiled as she watched them. This was what they had built together. This was peace. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Ambassador Kethvar approaching. The small Corvan diplomat barely reached her knee, but his mind was sharp as any blade. His forearms moved gracefully as he walked, a sign of contentment among his people. The best kind, Sarah replied, kneeling down so they could speak eye to eye. Are you ready for today's council meeting? Kethvar's antennae twitched with amusement. As ready as anyone can be for 3 hours of trade agreements. He paused, watching his own younglings play with human children. You know, Sarah, when my people first met yours 200 years ago, we thought you were just another warrior race. Big, loud, always fighting among yourselves, Sarah laughed. We were pretty rough around the edges back then. But you learned, you grew, you became something more. The small alien's voice grew serious. My people respect strength, but we love wisdom. Humans have both. The conversation was interrupted by Sarah's communication device chirping. She pressed the small button on her collar. Chen here. Commander, you're needed at the station. Priority 1 message from Earth Command. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Rodriguez, her aide back on New Geneva Station. Sarah sighed and stood up. Duty calls, old friend. I'll see you at the summit tonight. Wouldn't miss it. My younglings are performing their traditional dance. They've been practicing for weeks. Kethvar's pride was clear in his voice. Sarah made her way to the transport pad where a sleek shuttle waited to take her back to New Geneva. The massive space station hung in orbit above Thessia Prime like a silver wheel, its arms stretching out in 12 directions. Each arm housed representatives from one of the Alliance worlds. At the center sat the human section, not because they ruled, but because they had become the heart that kept everything beating together. The shuttle docked smoothly at Bay 7. Sarah walked through corridors that hummed with activity. Marathari diplomats glided through water-filled tubes that ran alongside the main walkways. Vexani representatives sparkled as they communicated through light patterns. The air itself seemed to sing with the harmony of different species working as one. Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared at her side, his face worried. The message came in 30 minutes ago. It's coded Black 7. Sarah's blood went cold. Black 7 meant immediate galactic threat. She hadn't seen that code in over 50 years. Who sent it? Admiral Kane himself, ma'am. He wants to speak with you directly. They reached Sarah's office in the command section. The room was simple but efficient, with windows that looked out at the swirling colors of the Thessia Nebula. Rodriguez activated the quantum communicator, and within seconds the weathered face of Admiral Marcus Kane appeared on the screen. Sarah. Kane's voice was grim. We have a problem. A big one. The Hive Dominion? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Kane nodded. Our deep space scouts have detected massive fleet movements in their territory. They're mobilizing everything they have. Ships we've never seen before. Weapons signatures that don't match anything in our databases. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Hive Dominion had been quiet for the past decade, but intelligence reports suggested they were building something. The insectoid race viewed all other species as inferior, existing only to be conquered or destroyed. They had tried to expand into Alliance space before, but careful diplomacy and strong defenses had kept them at bay. How much time do we have? Sarah asked, unknown. Could be days, could be months. But Sarah, Kane's face grew even more serious. This isn't like their usual raids. The scope of this mobilization suggests they're planning something unprecedented. I'll call an emergency council session, Sarah said. All Alliance worlds need to know. Negative. Kane's response surprised her. For now, this stays between Earth Command and Station Commanders. We don't want to cause panic until we know more. But Sarah, quietly prepare your people. Make sure all civilians can evacuate quickly if needed. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at the blank screen. She turned to Rodriguez, who had heard every word. Tom, I want you to run a full diagnostic on all defense systems. Make it look like routine maintenance. Yes, ma'am. Should I alert the other species security chiefs? Sarah thought for a moment. The alliance was built on trust and cooperation. Keeping secrets felt wrong, but Kane was right about avoiding panic. Not yet. But start quietly checking evacuation procedures with all departments. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal activities that felt anything but normal. Sarah attended budget meetings, reviewed trade proposals, and smiled at visiting dignitaries, all while her mind raced with possibilities. The Hive Dominion had never been subtle before. They conquered through overwhelming force, turning entire worlds into breeding grounds for their endless swarms. If they were planning something different now, something bigger, evening came, and with it the grand summit dinner. The main hall of New Geneva had been transformed into a garden that mixed elements from all 12 worlds. Murthari coral sculptures rose from pools that reflected Vexani light art. Sylph collective flowers released scents that made everyone feel peaceful and happy. The Corvin had built tiny mechanical butterflies that danced through the air. Sarah wore her dress uniform, the one with medals from a dozen different worlds. Around her, representatives from across the alliance mingled freely. She watched Ambassador Tivek of the Murthari, sharing a joke with Chancellor Brightsong of the Sylph Collective. Their species had been at war 3 centuries ago. Now their children played together. "You look troubled, my friend." Sarah turned to find Kethver beside her, now wearing the ceremonial robes of his people. The tiny alien's 4 eyes studied her face with concern. "Just thinking about how precious all this is," Sarah said, gesturing at the celebration around them. "And how fragile," Kethvar added quietly. "You've heard something, haven't you?" Sarah looked down at her small friend. The Corvin were incredibly intelligent. It was impossible to hide much from them. Nothing confirmed, just shadows moving in the dark. Kethvar nodded slowly. "My people have an old saying, the storm that destroys is often preceded by the calmest sky." He paused, watching his younglings perform their traditional dance. "But we also believe that the strongest trees are those with the deepest roots. Our alliance has deep roots, Sarah. Deep enough to survive a hurricane? That depends on the hurricane," Kethvar said. "But I have faith in our gardener." "Our gardener?" "Humanity. You've tended this garden we call the Alliance. You've helped it grow strong and beautiful. If a storm comes," the small alien's voice became firm with conviction, "I believe you'll protect it." The ceremony continued around them. Children laughed, adults shared stories, and for a moment, Sarah almost forgot about the darkness gathering at the edge of their light. Almost. As the evening wound down, she found herself on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the cold black between galaxies, an ancient evil was stirring. But here, surrounded by the warm glow of friendship and trust, Sarah allowed herself to hope that whatever was coming, they would face it together. She had no idea that by tomorrow, most of her friends would be dead. Sarah woke to alarms screaming through New Geneva Station. Red lights flashed in her quarters as she rolled out of bed, her mind instantly alert. The time display showed 0347 hours. Her communication device was buzzing with emergency signals. "Chen here," she said, pulling on her uniform with practiced speed. "Commander, you need to get to the command center now." Rodriguez's voice was tight with panic. "We're receiving distress signals from multiple Alliance worlds." "All of them?" Sarah ran through corridors filled with confused station personnel. The Murthari were clicking rapidly in their stress language, while Vexani representatives flickered between bright and dim patterns. She burst into the command center to find chaos. The main display showed a galaxy map with 11 red warning lights. Every Alliance world except Earth was flashing emergency signals. Rodriguez met her at the central console, his face pale. "It started 20 minutes ago," he said quickly. "First Corvin Prime went dark. Then Murthari homeworld. Now we're losing contact with everyone." "Show me the last transmissions," Sarah ordered. The first recording made her stomach turn cold. It was from Corvin Prime, their tiny allies' homeworld. The image showed their beautiful crystal cities under attack by massive black ships. The Hive Dominion vessels moved like hungry insects covering the sky. Weapons fire rained down on defenseless civilians. Then came Ambassador Kethvar's voice, broken and desperate. "New Geneva, this is Corvin Prime Emergency Command." They came without warning. No demands, no communication. "They're killing everyone. The younglings, oh ancestors, they're killing the younglings." The transmission cut to static. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. Those children from yesterday, the ones dancing and playing. Next transmission, she whispered. Murthari Prime appeared on screen. The ocean world that had been home to billions of aquatic beings was turning red. The Dominion ships were draining entire seas into space while the population suffocated on dry land. Ancient coral cities built over thousands of years cracked and died as their creators gasped for water that was no longer there. How is this possible? Sarah asked. Our early warning systems should have detected them days ago. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, the station's intelligence officer, looked up from his console. They're using some kind of quantum disruption field. It's jamming our sensors and communications. We're only receiving fragments, and only because these worlds had backup quantum beacons. The next transmission showed the Vexani crystal homeworld. The crystalline beings' beautiful cities were being shattered by sonic weapons that caused the crystal people to crack and die in agony. Their death songs created a harmony so sad that several bridge officers had to look away. This isn't random, Sarah realized. This is coordinated. They hit everyone at once to prevent us from helping each other. Commander, the communications officer called out. I'm getting something from Sylph Collective Worlds. The image that appeared broke Sarah's heart. The peaceful plant beings who had never harmed anyone were burning. Chemical fire rained from Dominion ships, fire that was designed to prevent the plant people from regenerating. Ancient forest cities that had grown for millennia were turning to ash. The screaming of dying trees filled the audio, a sound no human was meant to hear. For the next 2 hours, they watched their friends die. Each transmission was worse than the last. The Dominion wasn't just conquering, they were exterminating. Entire species were being wiped out with scientific precision. Why? Rodriguez whispered, staring at the displays. Why kill everyone? If they wanted the worlds, why not just enslave the populations? Sarah understood with horrible clarity. Because we made them afraid. The Alliance proved that different species could work together. We became stronger than any of them alone. The Dominion couldn't allow that example to exist. The last transmission came from a small research station in the Vexani system. A human scientist named Dr. Martinez appeared on screen, his laboratory burning behind him. This is Research Station Delta 7. The Dominion fleet is moving toward the inner system. They've destroyed everything. Everyone is dead. Earth Command, if you can hear this. They left messages carved into the ruins. The same message everywhere. The doctor held up a datapad with shaking hands. The words were burned into the screen in the angular script of the Hive Dominion. Submit or share their fate. Then Dr. Martinez looked directly into the camera. They're coming for Earth next. But they want you to see this first. They want you to know what happens to those who stand against them. They want you to surrender without a fight. His voice became firm. Don't do it, Earth. Don't let our deaths be meaningless. Remember us. Avenge us. The transmission ended in static. The command center fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the soft weeping of several officers. Sarah stared at the dark displays, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. In less than 6 hours, 11 civilizations had been wiped from the galaxy. Billions of beings, many of whom she had called friends, were dead. Commander, Hayes said quietly, I'm detecting massive quantum signatures moving toward Earth space. The Dominion fleet. They're coming. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. The Dominion had made a fatal error in their calculations. They thought showing humanity the massacre of their allies would make them surrender. They thought fear would break the human spirit. They didn't understand humans at all. Send a message to Admiral Kane, Sarah said, her voice deadly calm. Tell him what happened here. Tell him about the children. What about evacuation? Rodriguez asked. Should we prepare the civilian ships? Sarah looked around the command center at faces filled with grief and growing rage. She thought about Kethvar's younglings performing their dance just yesterday. She thought about the Murthari children splashing in the pools. She thought about crystal beings singing lullabies and plant people telling stories under starlight. All dead, all murdered for the crime of believing different species could be friends. No evacuation, she said. Send word to Earth Command. Tell them the Alliance is dead, but we're not. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you murder a human's family. In the distance, red lights began to flash as sensors detected the approaching Dominion fleet. They came confident in their victory, expecting to find a species broken by grief and terror. They would find something else entirely. Sarah looked at the star map one more time, memorizing the positions of the dead worlds. Each red light represented not just a planet, but entire civilizations full of beings who had trusted humanity to protect them. They had failed in that trust, but they would not fail in their response. "Get me Admiral Kane on the quantum line," she ordered. "Emergency authorization Omega Black." As the connection established, Sarah felt the last of her mercy drain away. The Hive Dominion wanted to see monsters? They wanted to rule through fear and slaughter? They were about to learn that there were things in this galaxy far more terrifying than they could imagine. Things that looked human, spoke human languages, and had once been human, but were human no longer. The war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin, and it would be written in fire and screaming metal across the void between stars. The Dominion had killed everything Sarah Chen loved. Now they would learn the price of that mistake. 3 weeks after the massacre, Sarah stood in what had once been the playground of Corvin Prime. The tiny bodies of children lay scattered among broken toys and melted playground equipment. The Dominion had used heat weapons on the younglings, not enough to kill them quickly, but enough to make them suffer. Behind her, Captain Morrison threw up for the 3rd time that morning. Even the hardened Marines in her squad were struggling with what they found on each world they visited. "Preliminary count shows 8 billion dead on this world alone," reported Dr. Kim, the expedition's forensic specialist. Her voice was mechanical, empty. Most were civilians. Children. Elderly non-combatants. Sarah knelt beside a small Corvin body. The child still held a human-made toy soldier in its tiny hands. She remembered giving that exact toy to Ambassador Kethvar's youngest son just 2 months ago. The little one had been so excited, chattering about how he wanted to be a brave warrior like the humans when he grew up. "Commander," Morrison called out, his voice shaky. "You need to see this." Sarah followed him to what had been the central plaza. Carved deep into the crystal ground, burned with acid so it would never fade, were words in perfect human English. "Your friends screamed your names as they died." For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. Then something cold and hard settled in her chest where her heart used to be. "Take recordings of everything," she ordered. "Every body, every message, every destroyed building. I want documentation down to the molecular level." "Ma'am?" Morrison looked confused. "Evidence," Sarah said simply. "For the trial." "What trial?" "There's no one left to prosecute." Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "There will be." The survey continued for 6 more days. Each Alliance world told the same story of coordinated extermination. The Dominion hadn't just killed, they had tortured, experimented, and played with their victims. On Mirthari Prime, they had forced aquatic children to watch their parents die of dehydration. On the Sylph worlds, they had burned only the adult trees, leaving saplings to slowly starve without their caretakers. It was systematic, calculated, evil in its purest form. When Sarah returned to Earth, she found a world transformed. The peaceful blue planet she had known was now covered in industrial complexes that worked day and night. The night side blazed with the light of weapons factories and shipyards. The entire planet hummed with the sound of preparation for war. Admiral Kane met her at Luna Station, humanity's primary military complex. He looked like he had aged 20 years in the past month. His eyes held the same cold fury that Sarah felt burning in her own chest. "Report," he said as they walked through corridors filled with soldiers and scientists. "Total extinction on all 11 worlds," Sarah replied. "No survivors." The Dominion was thorough. Kane stopped walking. "None, not even in hiding?" "None. They used bioscanners to hunt down every last individual. They wanted to make sure we understood the completeness of their victory." Sarah's voice never changed tone. They succeeded. They entered a conference room where Earth's most powerful leaders waited. The President of the United Earth Government, the Secretary General of the Colonial Alliance, the heads of the major military branches, and others Sarah didn't recognize, but there was one person she did recognize, and his presence made her blood run cold. Dr. William Cross sat at the far end of the table, looking exactly as dangerous as his reputation suggested. Cross had been exiled to the outer colonies 50 years ago for developing weapons so terrible that even wartime Earth had refused to use them. "Dr. Cross," Sarah said carefully, "I thought you were still in exile." The thin man smiled, and Sarah was reminded why predators showed their teeth. "Recent events have caused a re-evaluation of previous policies. The President has asked me to resume my research." "What research?" Kane answered. "Project Prometheus. Weapons development that was classified beyond top secret. The kind of things we swore we'd never build. And now? President Martinez leaned forward. Now we're going to build them all. Dr. Cross, show her the preliminary reports. Cross activated a holographic display that made Sarah's stomach turn. The images showed weapons that violated every treaty humanity had ever signed. Quantum bombs that could collapse matter at the molecular level, temporal disruption devices that trapped targets in endless loops of dying, bioweapons that could rewrite DNA in real time. These are illegal under galactic law, Sarah said. Galactic law? Kane's laugh was bitter. The same law that was supposed to protect our allies? The same treaties that the Dominion ignored when they murdered children? President Martinez stood up. Commander Chen, I'm going to be very clear. The Hive Dominion wanted to send us a message with their massacre. They wanted to show us what happens to species that oppose them. They wanted us to surrender without a fight. The president's eyes grew hard as diamonds. Well, we have a message to send back. And we're going to write it in the ashes of every Dominion world until there's nothing left but empty space where they used to exist. Sarah felt a chill of fear, but not for the Dominion, for what humanity was becoming. Sir, if we use weapons like this, we become no better than them. Dr. Cross laughed, a sound like breaking glass. My dear Commander, we passed no better than them the moment they butchered our friends. Now we're going to become something much worse. Kane placed a data pad in front of Sarah. Your new assignment. You're being promoted to Admiral and given command of the 1st Retribution Fleet. Your mission is simple. Find every Dominion world and remove it from existence. Sarah stared at the orders. They were signed by every major leader of humanity and stamped with authorizations she had never seen before. At the bottom, in small print, was a single line that made her hands shake. No prisoners. No mercy, no survivors. What about our own people? She asked. The colonies, the civilian populations? Already evacuating to deep space bunkers, President Martinez replied. This is going to be a war like nothing the galaxy has ever seen. We're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for the right to exist without fear. Sarah looked around the table at faces filled with cold determination. These were people she had known for years, but they looked like strangers now. The massacre had changed them just as it had changed her. There's something else, Kane said quietly. Dr. Cross has developed enhancement procedures. Genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, neural rewiring. They'll make our soldiers faster, stronger, smarter, but, Cross answered with his terrible smile. But they'll also remove certain psychological limitations. Empathy, mercy, hesitation, all the things that make killing difficult. We're going to create the perfect warriors. You mean the perfect monsters? Exactly. And Commander, Admiral, you're first on the list. Sarah looked down at the authorization again. At the bottom, in addition to all the official signatures, someone had written a single line in what looked like Corvin script. She recognized the handwriting. It was from Ambassador Kethvar's final message. The translation was simple. Remember us. Sarah signed the authorization. 2 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the enhancement chamber deep beneath Luna Station. Machines hummed around her as nanomachines rewrote her DNA and cybernetic implants replaced portions of her brain. She could feel her humanity slipping away with each passing minute, replaced by something harder and colder. How do you feel? Dr. Cross asked as the process completed. Sarah tested her new body, feeling strength that no human should possess, speed that defied physics, and a mind that calculated death with mathematical precision. Most disturbing of all, she felt nothing at all when she imagined the slaughter to come. Empty, she answered honestly. Perfect. Empty vessels make the best weapons. Cross handed her a mirror. The face that looked back was still recognizably Sarah Chen, but the eyes belonged to something else entirely. The fleet is ready, Admiral, Kane reported as they walked toward the docking bay. 300 ships all equipped with Prometheus weapons. 50,000 enhanced soldiers, the most powerful force humanity has ever assembled. Sarah nodded, feeling no excitement or fear or anticipation, only cold purpose. What's our first target? Kethmora, the Dominion's fortress world, the place where they planned the massacre. Good. Sarah's voice carried no emotion at all. I want to send them our own message before we begin the real work. As her flagship prepared to depart, Sarah stood on the bridge looking out at Earth one last time. Somewhere down there, human children played in parks and laughed at simple jokes. They lived in a world where mercy and compassion still existed. She would never see that world again. The thing that had once been Sarah Chen was leaving to ensure those children could keep their innocence, even if it meant she could never return to share it. The Dominion had wanted to see monsters. They were about to get their wish. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Righteous Fury as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kethmora system. The Dominion fortress world hung in space like a massive tumor, its surface covered with the black spires of hive cities that reached up toward the stars. "Sensor report," Sarah commanded, her enhanced voice carrying no emotion. 43 billion Dominion inhabitants on the surface, reported Lieutenant Hayes, his own voice mechanically calm after his neural modifications. Defense fleet numbering approximately 800 vessels. "They're moving to intercept." Sarah watched the enemy ships approaching on the tactical display. Once she might have felt something, fear, excitement, even pity. Now she felt only cold calculation as her cybernetic implants ran probability analyses and target prioritization. "Open a channel to the Dominion fleet," she ordered. The communications officer worked quickly. Within moments, the main screen filled with the image of a Dominion war queen, her insectoid features twisted in what humans would recognize as arrogance. "I am War Queen Zethkar of the Kethmora Defense Fleet," the alien chittered through the translation system. "You will surrender your ships immediately or be destroyed. Your pathetic alliance is broken. Submit to the Dominion and your deaths will be swift." Sarah stepped forward, her enhanced frame moving with predatory grace. The modifications had changed her appearance, taller, stronger, with eyes that reflected light like a machine's sensors. When she spoke, her voice carried across space with deadly certainty. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Retribution Fleet. We are here to collect a debt." The War Queen's mandibles clicked with amusement. What debt could inferior mammals possibly claim from their superiors? The lives of 8 trillion beings. Our friends? Our allies. Our family. Sarah's expression never changed. "You showed them no mercy. We extend the same courtesy. You dare threaten the might of the Dominion? We who have conquered 1,000 worlds." Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut. "War Queen Zethkar, in approximately 37 minutes, you and everyone on this world will be dead. I wanted you to know why." The transmission cut to static as the Dominion fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled space with deadly light. The human fleet moved to meet them, but not in any formation the galaxy had seen before. Where other species fought in orderly battle lines, the human ships moved like a pack of wolves. They scattered and regrouped, attacked from impossible angles, and used the enemy's own formation against them. But it wasn't just their tactics that were different, it was their weapons. The first Dominion ship to die simply ceased to exist. One moment it was firing at the human dreadnought. The next it was gone, not destroyed, not exploded, just erased from reality as if it had never been built. "Quantum deletion successful," reported the weapons officer. "Target removed from the probability matrix." More human ships opened fire. Temporal disruptors trapped entire squadrons of enemy vessels in time loops where they experienced their destruction over and over, unable to die or escape. Bioweapons designed specifically for the Dominion's insectoid physiology turned their own biology against them, causing their shells to dissolve while they were still alive. But the most terrifying weapon was the humans themselves. Enhanced soldiers in powered armor boarded Dominion ships not to capture them, but to ensure that every last crew member died in the most efficient way possible. They moved through enemy vessels like death itself, leaving nothing but corpses in their wake. War Queen Zethkar watched her fleet die with growing horror. "This is impossible. No species fights like this." "Admiral," reported the tactical officer aboard the Righteous Fury, "enemy fleet strength down to 30%. Shall we accept their surrender?" Sarah looked at the tactical display showing Dominion ships trying desperately to retreat. Once she might have felt satisfaction at their fear. Now she felt nothing but the need to complete her mission. Negative. No survivors. The slaughter continued for another 20 minutes. When the last Dominion ship exploded in silent fire, Sarah turned her attention to the planet below. "Deploy the extinction protocol," she ordered. Her bridge crew worked with mechanical precision. Weapons that humanity had sworn never to build powered up with deadly purpose. The first wave was quantum bombs that targeted the molecular bonds holding matter together. Entire cities simply came apart, their atoms scattering to the solar wind. The second wave was worse. Bioengineered viruses fell from space like rain, designed to target every form of life on the planet. Plants withered, animals collapsed, and the Dominion inhabitants found their own biology turned against them in ways their worst nightmares couldn't imagine. But Sarah wasn't finished. The third wave consisted of nanomachines that converted organic matter into gray dust. They spread across the planet's surface like a plague, consuming everything they touched and reproducing exponentially. Within 6 hours, Kethmora was a dead world. No plants, no animals, no insects, no bacteria, nothing. Just empty rock floating in space where once a thriving world had existed. Broadcast our message to the entire Dominion network, Sarah ordered. The communications officer activated the quantum transmitters. Sarah's image appeared on screens throughout Dominion space, reaching every world and every hive. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Retribution Fleet," she announced to billions of watching aliens. "You murdered our allies. You killed our friends. You slaughtered children who trusted us to protect them." The image behind her showed the dead world of Kethmora, its surface gray and lifeless. "This is the first payment on the debt you owe. We will come to every world in your empire. We will find every last one of you. And we will ensure that the crime you committed against innocence is answered in full." Sarah leaned forward, her enhanced eyes reflecting the light like those of a hunting predator. "You wanted to rule through fear? You wanted to show the galaxy what happens to those who oppose you?" Her smile was terrible to behold. "Allow us to return the lesson." The transmission ended. News of Kethmora's destruction spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Other species that had remained neutral during the Alliance's golden years suddenly found themselves reconsidering humanity's role in galactic politics. The peaceful mediators were gone, replaced by something that made the Dominion's cruelty look like childish pranks. But Sarah and her fleet were already moving to their next target. Then the next, and the next. The Dominion had awakened something that had been sleeping in the darkness between stars. Something that wore human faces and spoke human languages but was no longer limited by human mercy. They had wanted to see monsters. Their wish was being granted with interest compounded by every dead world. They left in their wake. War Queen Supreme Velkara, ruler of the Dominion Empire, stood in her throne room on the capital world as reports poured in from across her territory. World after world going silent, fleets disappearing without a trace, entire systems being sterilized of all life. "How many worlds have we lost?" she demanded. 17 confirmed destroyed, Supreme One, her aide reported with terrified clicks. 3 more under attack. The humans, they don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just kill everything and move on. Velkara stared at the tactical display showing humanity's inexorable advance through Dominion space. Each human fleet moved like a plague, leaving nothing but death and silence in its wake. "Send envoys," she ordered. "Offer them surrender terms, tribute, anything they want. We tried, Supreme One. They don't respond to communications. They just attack." Velkara felt fear for the first time in her centuries of life. The Dominion had ruled through terror and overwhelming force, but they had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't conquering. They were exterminating. "How long before they reach the capital?" she asked quietly. Her aide consulted his instruments with shaking claws. "At their current rate of advance, 6 months, Supreme One." Velkara looked out at her beautiful capital city, filled with billions of her subjects. Soon it would be gray dust floating in space just like all the others. The Dominion was about to learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end of their own philosophy. And the humans were very, very good students. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the Dominion capital world, her boots crunching on the gray dust that had once been a thriving city of billions. The enhanced soldiers under her command moved through the empty streets like ghosts, their scanners sweeping for any signs of life. There were none. There never were any more. "Final count confirms total extinction," reported Captain Hayes, his cybernetic implants glowing softly in the dim light. "The last Dominion world is dead." Sarah nodded, feeling no satisfaction or relief. The emotion dampeners in her modified brain made such feelings impossible. The war was over, but victory felt as empty as the dead worlds they had left behind. 8 months. That's how long it had taken to eliminate the Hive Dominion entirely, an empire that had controlled a third of the galaxy, reduced to cosmic dust and fading radiation signatures. "Any word from the deep space pursuit teams?" Sarah asked. "Negative, Admiral. The last refugee ships were intercepted in the Outer Rim 3 days ago. No survivors." Hayes paused, consulting his datapad. "Total confirmed kills: 4,700,000,000,000 Dominion subjects across 237 worlds." The numbers meant nothing to Sarah anymore. They were just statistics in a report that would never be filed. Earth Command had stopped asking for casualty reports after the first month. When the scale of the extermination had become clear, her communication implant chirped with an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Kane's face appeared on her retinal display, looking older than his 70 years. "Sarah, it's time to come home," he said simply. "Status of remaining operations: complete. The last Dominion stronghold fell yesterday. There's nothing left to hunt." Kane's expression was unreadable. "The galaxy is different now." Sarah understood what he meant. News of the Dominion's complete extinction had spread to every civilized world. Other species that had once seen humans as peaceful mediators now viewed them with the same terror that primitives reserved for natural disasters. The Galactic Council had called emergency sessions. Trade agreements were being canceled. Defensive pacts were forming, not to protect against some external threat but to protect against Earth. "What's the political situation?" Sarah asked. Kane sighed. 47 species have formed the defensive alliance against human expansion. They're demanding that we submit to galactic oversight and disarm our Prometheus weapons. The Rigelian Empire has moved their entire fleet to the border between their space and ours. Sarah processed this information with mechanical efficiency. The other species were afraid. They had every right to be. Humanity had demonstrated that they could eliminate entire civilizations with clinical precision. "Are we negotiating?" President Martinez tried. "They won't even meet with our diplomats. They're convinced we're planning to conquer the entire galaxy." Kane's voice became bitter. "Can't imagine why they'd think that." The transmission paused as Kane reviewed something off-screen. When he returned, his expression was grave. "Sarah, there's something else. A new species made first contact with our outer colonies 3 days ago. The Etherians, energy beings from the galactic core. They're requesting a meeting." Sarah felt her combat implants automatically assess this new information as a potential threat. First contact protocols had been suspended since the war began. Every new encounter was now evaluated through the lens of elimination or subjugation. What do they want? To talk. They claim to have been watching our war with interest. They want to understand what we've become. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the observation lounge of Earth Station 1, looking out at a ship unlike anything in the galaxy. The Etherian vessel seemed to be made of crystallized light, shifting between colors that had no names in any human language. She was no longer alone. The modifications that had made her the perfect weapon also made normal human interaction impossible. She couldn't feel empathy, couldn't experience joy or sadness or love. She existed in a state of permanent emotional winter, useful for war but toxic for peace. The Etherian representative materialized in the lounge as a shifting column of silver light that somehow managed to seem both beautiful and alien. When it spoke, its voice resonated directly in Sarah's mind. "Admiral Chen, I am Scholar Luminous of Deep Thought. I come seeking understanding." "Understanding of what?" Sarah's response was automatic, emotionless. "Of what you have become, of what your species has chosen to be." The light being pulsed thoughtfully. "We have observed many species in their moment of greatest trauma. Most choose one of 2 paths. They break and fade away, or they become stronger through adaptation. Your species chose a 3rd path, which is transformation into something beyond recognition. You faced extinction and responded by becoming extinction itself." The Etherian moved closer, its light casting strange shadows. "The question that fascinates us is whether you can find your way back." Sarah considered this. "Back to what?" "To what you were before the massacre. To the species that built the alliance, that protected the weak, that chose diplomacy over destruction." The being's light dimmed slightly. "Or is that Sarah Chen lost forever?" For a moment something flickered in Sarah's enhanced consciousness, a memory of children playing in crystal gardens, of laughter mixing with alien songs, of hope for a better tomorrow. Then the emotion dampeners activated. and the feeling disappeared. That Sarah Chen died with her friends, she replied. What exists now is what was necessary. And what becomes of necessary monsters when the necessity passes? Sarah had no answer for that question. The Etherians seemed to understand her silence. Your species stands at a crossroads, Admiral. You can remain what you have become, the galaxy's apex predator, ruling through fear and the memory of what you did to the Dominion. Or you can attempt to reclaim what you lost. And if we choose to remain as we are, then the galaxy will adapt. Other species will unite against you, develop weapons to match yours, become as ruthless as you have become. Eventually, everything will burn, and the stars themselves will weep for what was lost. Scholar Luminous of deep thought began to fade, preparing to return to its ship. I will leave you with this thought, Admiral. The Dominion believed that strength came from the ability to destroy. You proved them wrong by becoming more destructive than they ever were. But perhaps true strength lies in the ability to choose mercy when vengeance is easier. The being disappeared, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of an impossible choice. Months passed. The galaxy remained tense, balanced on the knife's edge between uneasy peace and inevitable war. Humanity's colonies continued to grow, protected by fleets that could sterilize worlds with the push of a button. Other species huddled in their defensive alliances, too afraid to attack but too proud to submit. Sarah found herself returning to the ruins of Thessia Prime, where it all began. The gardens where children had played were now empty fields of crystal dust. The memorial she had planted there had taken root, alien flowers growing in impossible colors among the remains of a civilization that had trusted humans to protect them. As she knelt among the memorial flowers, something stirred in her enhanced consciousness, a feeling she hadn't experienced since her modifications, guilt. Not the mathematical assessment of tactical errors, but the deep, human understanding of moral failure. They had failed to protect their friends. But in seeking vengeance, had they become worse than their enemies? Sarah's communication implant activated with an incoming message. A new species had made contact. The Builders, ancient creatures who had been sleeping for millennia. They were offering to mediate between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. They wanted to know if Sarah would attend a peace summit. She stared at the memorial flowers, thinking of Ambassador Kethvar's final words. Remember us. Perhaps remembering them meant more than just avenging their deaths. Perhaps it meant trying to rebuild what had been destroyed, not just the cities and worlds, but the trust and hope that had made the alliance possible. Sarah Chen stood up among the alien flowers, her enhanced frame casting long shadows in the setting sun. The choice before her was simple but not easy. Remain the perfect weapon she had become, or attempt the harder path of becoming human again. The galaxy held its breath and waited for her answer. In the distance, a ship's engines hummed to life. Whether it carried her to war or to peace remained to be seen. But for the first time since the massacre, Admiral Sarah Chen felt something other than cold calculation in her modified heart. She felt hope, and that was either humanity's salvation or the galaxy's doom.